Dear reader, I'm Tony and this is Book Text. I'm going to try a different kind of video today. I really enjoy watching other people's Friday Reads videos, and I'm going to try my hand at a Friday Reads video today. But first, our word of the day is the word snow-broth. Snow-broth. It's a noun. It's a more archaic term for melted snow. But isn't it poetic? Oh, snow-broth. It's got such lovely vowel sounds and softer consonants. I really like that. Snow-broth. I'm going to use it come winter when the snow actually starts to fall and hopefully melt. So I'm going to talk about what I'm currently reading, what I have recently read, and then give some hints for what's coming next week. First, I finished 2 books this week. Oops, I just knocked it over. I finished the 3rd book in the Anne of Green Gables series, Anne of the Island by L.M. Montgomery. In this book, Anne goes to Redmond College in Kingsport and gets her degree there. And she makes lots of new friends. She receives a lot of marriage proposals, like a lot of proposals. And I really enjoyed reminiscing about my college experience, and especially in her relationships with her roommates. That really made me miss my old roommates. So I thought this was a lovely, charming book, fun kind of nostalgia experience for me. I listened to an audiobook of it, and the narrator was Lori Klein, and I listened to her read the first 2 books in the series as well. She is amazing. She nailed Anne's voice. That's the voice that I'll hear in my head as I finish reading the series. Unfortunately, I don't think she recorded any of the other books, so as I finish reading Anne of Green Gables series, I will have to read them without Lori Klein, and that makes me very sad. But this was just a lovely book. I gave it 4 stars. I also finished Mansfield Park by Jane Austen as part of Jane Austen July. Now, this book is about Fanny Price. She goes to live at her uncle's estate, and the whole book is about her observing the kind of fakery and game that is upper class courtship. And I thought that was really interesting that Fanny is really an observer. She does not participate very much in the relationship kind of musical chairs that is happening in this story. I came into this book figuring that it wasn't going to be a great love story because her main love interest is her cousin, and so I thought that was kind of icky in a modern consideration. So I wasn't going to read it for the love story. I was going to read it for the social commentary, which Jane Austen is famous for, and it was scathing. It was pretty good. I loved analyzing this, doing a really close reading, and I will actually have more to say about my analysis of this story when I wrap up Jane Austen July. So more to come about Mansfield Park. But I also gave this one 4 stars because I really enjoyed going back to my roots as a college student. Again, feeling nostalgic for college apparently, when I was kind of analyzing this like I would have been writing a paper for it. Now, those are the 2 books that I finished. I am currently reading several books. The first one is an audiobook I'm listening to. It is Washington Black by Edugyan. And this is the story, it's historical fiction. It is about Wash, who is a young slave in Barbados and in the 1830s. And when he is the only witness to a white man's suicide, he has to go on the run. And so he's not exactly his master. His master's brother, who has been working with him on some science experiments, quite an eccentric man, helps him to escape to freedom. And so this book deals really with the question of what is freedom, what do we do with our freedom, and the, kind of the relationships that Wash enjoys throughout his experiences. This is a dark book, but also kind of sweet. Like, there are some really good things that happen for Wash, and obviously some really terrible ones. I am enjoying this. I'm enjoying the narration. I think this will be a 4 or 5 star read. It's quite an adventure story once you get going. You get to see a lot of different landscapes, different descriptions. The characterizations are really interesting. And I love reading about this time period anyway. Obviously, I read a lot of classics from this era. So I'm enjoying seeing a different perspective, different point of view. The character spends a lot of time in Canada, which I believe is where the author is from. So I'm excited to finish this one. I think I'll have more to say when I finish it. I'm also reading, this is another Jane Austen July read, Charlotte Lennox's The Female Quixote. This is the story of Arabella, who is obsessed with classical literature, like the Roman and Greek classics, and she starts to assume that life is like these stories, the drama, the romance, the excitement, the adventure. And so she gets into many spots of bother because she's assuming things about people and about situations that aren't true. Because she's kind of, she likes to interpose her stories that she's read onto situations, and she's always finding connections. She frequently says kind of like, this reminds me of the book that I read, and I feel targeted by this because I do that as well. I mean, we all do, right? We read a lot. We're always finding connections to things in real life if they were good books. So I'm really identifying with Arabella. I also like the intertextuality of Don Quixote. She is very much like Don Quixote, where her imagination about a past time period and putting it over this current time period for her is very much like Don Quixote, and I'm enjoying recognizing those similarities. This is another book that's going to be maybe 4 or 5 stars. I really love it. It's hilarious. So funny. But I'll have more to say about that when I wrap up Jane Austen July. The other Jane Austen July book that I am currently reading is Diana Peterfreund's For Darkness Shows the Stars. This is a futuristic YA retelling of Persuasion. And Persuasion is my favorite Jane Austen story. I like the idea of kind of loyalty, waiting around for the person that you love. In this story, there has been a genetic apocalypse and kind of a war associated with that. And so some people are genetically pure and they become the upper class in the new culture, in the new society. And other people, their ancestors were genetically reduced, is what they call it, where they had some mutations that went wrong and made them, I feel like it gave them some mental disabilities. But their descendants are starting to become stronger, and so you have this kind of lower class that is rising and the upper class that is falling. And so it deals with the same class issues in a really interesting setting that Jane Austen deals with. And so the main character is called Eliot North, and she is trying to run and keep her father's estate afloat, and her former true love returns. He's from a lower class, and he comes back into her life. I just really like the sci-fi nature of this. I love the references to, it's kind of fun to try to find how she's going to adapt certain elements from Persuasion. So this is a reread for me. I'm really enjoying rereading it and finding kind of the clues that are being set up about some of the twists. So enjoying this one, but I'll have more to say once again when I finish Jane Austen July. The last 2 books I am reading are part of a project I'm doing to try to educate myself on writing. So I am a writing teacher, but I'm also a writer myself, and I feel like I've been neglecting that aspect of my career. So I have been following Ray Bradbury's advice to read 1,000 short stories and 1,000 poems, starting with 1 a night. So kind of reading for 1,000 nights. Almost like the Scheherazade in the 1001 Arabian Nights. But this is what I'm currently reading for short stories, trying to get the feel for the structure and the technique of writing a short story. This is Isaac Asimov, The Winds of Change and Other Stories. It's kind of a random collection of his sci-fi short fiction, but each story has kind of a brief introduction by him about the origin and the publication of the story. So that's really interesting and helpful in kind of learning the technique or the reasons behind why he was writing certain things. One of my favorites that I read this week was called Ideas Die Hard. And it was about two men who are the first, it was written in 1957, so the context is important. They were the first men to travel to see the other side of the moon, the far side of the moon. And unfortunately, their trip to the other side of the moon is highly experimental. And they are physically trapped in their seats with nothing to do but talk to each other while they make this journey. And let's just say that a descent into madness ensues. I thought this was a really interesting short story. I thought there was a twist at the end, and it's amazing what you can do to get to know characters and to show that something happens, something changes in that short amount of time. So I'm looking forward to continuing reading more short stories by Isaac Asimov. I'm also, as part of that project, reading poetry. So what I'm currently reading, this is a reread for me, I'm reading The Museum of Distance by Ashley Seitz Kramer. And I actually picked up this short poetry collection when she did a reading at my university several years ago. But I find that this collection it feels very anxious to me, as in I am identifying with the anxiety that is kind of represented. I mean, even this picture, right, that her thoughts are kind of all over the place, they're flooding around. I feel that too. I have a hard time kind of focusing my thoughts when I'm anxious. So I'm really enjoying kind of identifying with that tone and also relishing in the language. So I'm going to share one of my favorite kind of parts from a poem with you. The poem is called The Storm, My Chest So Close to the Spade. I warmed the Nagano bulbs in my palm, asked each one to live deep and grow tall. My hands were in the dirt, my fingers finding roots, my sweat, the rain we'd needed for weeks. When my knees were tender from kneeling, my chest so close to the spade, the lightning seized me. My dark hair was not streaked white, but my voice fluttered from me, a wounded blue jay. I planted it in the opened earth. Some really evocative images there that I really like, and I'm loving kind of the feeling of anxiety. I don't love the feeling of anxiety in general, but I'm glad that I'm not alone in that feeling. Those poems are helping me to kind of sort through what I'm experiencing and how best to maybe organize my thoughts. So that's what I'm currently reading and what I have read. Coming up next week, I'm going to continue, obviously trying to finish most of these books. A couple of like the short stories and the poems will continue for maybe another month or so. I don't know how many are left, but I'm reading one a night, so I'm not trying to blast through those. I want to kind of think about them more and learn from them. But soon I will be announcing what I'm going to be reading for the Reading Rush readathon, I guess. And so more information will be coming on that next week. I'm actually going to extend it from 1 week to 2 weeks because I'm crazy, but I have the time, so I might as well get some reading in before fall semester starts and I get really busy teaching all of my writing classes. So what are you reading this week? Have you read anything that I read or that I'm currently reading? What were your thoughts? What's your favorite poem or short story that you kind of realized, this is really good writing? I'm enjoying kind of identifying what's good about short stories and poems and what's not good. So it's a journey, but I'm learning a lot from it. Remember, there's always another book.